You know that magical moment when you discover your husband's mistress thinks he's about as attractive as a gas station hot dog? Yeah, that was Tuesday for me. There I was, Madison Parker, sitting in divorce court watching my soon-to-be ex-husband Tyler sign papers with the enthusiasm of someone buying a lottery ticket, while his precious Savannah sat behind him picking her nail polish like she was defusing a bomb. Little did Tyler know, I had something better than any lawyer could provide. The truth, served ice-cold with a side of humiliation that would make reality TV producers weep with joy. See, 3 months earlier, Tyler had decided our 15-year marriage was about as exciting as watching paint dry in a retirement home. Apparently, my crime was existing while not being a 25-year-old Instagram influencer named Savannah, who somehow made duck faces look like high art. The man who once couldn't figure out how to work the coffee maker suddenly became a relationship expert, explaining to me, with the patience of someone teaching quantum physics to a goldfish, that he needed space to grow. Space to grow, in our house, with Savannah. While I got to grow in a studio apartment above Murphy's Pub on 5th Street that smelled like decades of broken dreams and spilled beer. The humiliation tour started on a perfectly ordinary Thursday morning in our suburban Dallas neighborhood. I was making breakfast, doing that thing wives do where they pretend scrambled eggs can fix a dying marriage, when Tyler walked into our kitchen wearing his serious conversation face. You know, the one men use when they're about to ruin your life but want to sound reasonable about it. "Madison, we need to talk," he said, adjusting his tie like he was preparing for a board meeting instead of destroying a family. Now, in movies, this is where the wife dramatically drops the spatula and gasps. In real life, I kept cooking because rent doesn't pay itself, and someone had to finish breakfast before it burned down the house along with my marriage. "About what, Tyler? The fact that you've been working late every night for 2 months? Or the fact that your secretary Savannah suddenly needs help with projects that apparently require overnight trips to Austin?" He had the audacity to look surprised, like I was some kind of detective genius instead of a woman with functioning brain cells and a working phone that could track locations. Men, I swear, they think we're decorative furniture until we start talking back. "Look, Madison, I've been thinking, dangerous hobby for you, honey. Remember last time you thought really hard? You bought that boat we used exactly once." Tyler's face went through more color changes than a mood ring at a therapy session. "I want a divorce." There it was, 15 years of marriage, 2 kids who were thankfully away at college, a mortgage, shared dreams, and approximately 4,000 loads of his laundry, all dismissed with the emotional weight of ordering takeout. But here's where Tyler's plan hit its first speed bump. He didn't just want a divorce. Oh no, that would be too simple. He wanted the house, half my retirement account, and for me to gracefully exit stage left while he played house with Miss Instagram Perfect. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," he continued, like he was announcing the weather. "You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live." "Savannah and you?" I interrupted, finally turning around with the spatula still in my hand. "Tyler, she's 25. When she was born, you were already complaining about your back pain. Age is just a number, Madison. What we have is real. Real. Like his receding hairline was real. Like his dad bod was real. Like his habit of falling asleep during movies and snoring like a freight train was real. But apparently, none of that mattered when you're having a midlife crisis sponsored by someone who thinks TikTok dances count as cardio. The next 2 weeks were like living in a sitcom written by someone who hated happy endings. Tyler moved his belongings out with the efficiency of a military operation, while Savannah showed up to help by mostly taking selfies in different rooms and asking if we had better lighting in the bathroom. She was everything I wasn't at 52, young, blonde, and seemingly impressed by Tyler's ability to grill burgers without starting a fire. She called him babe in that voice that made me wonder if someone was stepping on a squeaky toy, and he ate it up like it was the finest cuisine instead of processed cheese on white bread. The truly spectacular part was watching Tyler try to be young again. This man, who hadn't voluntarily exercised since the Clinton administration, suddenly started wearing skinny jeans that made him look like a sausage in denial. He bought a motorcycle, and started using words like lit and vibe in actual conversations with adults. But the absolute masterpiece was the night he sat me down for the talk. You know, the one where the cheating spouse tries to make their betrayal sound like a gift to humanity. Madison, I hope someday you'll understand that this is better for both of us. You deserve someone who appreciates you. Like you did for 15 years? I was different then. Savannah makes me feel alive again. Alive. Like he was some kind of zombie before Miss Selfie Stick came along with her magical youth serum. I wanted to remind him that feeling alive and actually being alive were two different things, and that his new girlfriend's idea of cooking was adding extra condiments to fast food. But honestly, why ruin the surprise? The man who once told me I was his everything, who promised to love me in sickness and health, who held my hand through my father's funeral and cheered louder than anyone at our daughter Emma's graduation, was now explaining to me like I was a slow child that our marriage was just a practice round for his real life with Savannah. So I did what any self-respecting woman would do. I smiled, nodded, and started planning while he planned his future as a middle-aged teenager. Because here's something Tyler never learned about me in 15 years of marriage. I don't get mad. I get thorough. And as I packed my belongings into boxes while listening to Savannah giggle about redecorating their kitchen, I couldn't help but smile. Because sometimes, the universe has a sense of humor darker than mine, and patience really is a virtue worth cultivating. Little did Tyler know, his perfect little love story was about to become a cautionary tale about the dangers of thinking with the wrong head. Moving into that studio apartment above Murphy's Pub was like getting demoted from adulting to amateur hour. But honestly, the soundtrack of drunk people singing karaoke until 2 a.m. was still more pleasant than listening to Tyler explain why his emotional affair was actually my fault for not being supportive enough. The apartment came furnished, and by furnished, I mean it had the decorating sensibility of someone who thought brown was the only color in existence, and that comfort was optional. But it had one thing my marriage didn't: honesty. The brown couch didn't pretend to be something it wasn't, and the leaky faucet didn't gaslight me into thinking the constant dripping was actually soothing white noise. Meanwhile, Tyler was living his best life in our 4-bedroom colonial, posting Facebook photos of him and Savannah at trendy downtown Dallas restaurants like they were some kind of power couple, instead of a walking midlife crisis and his emotional support blonde. My daughter Emma called from UT Austin, her voice carefully neutral in that way kids perfect when their parents are imploding. "Mom, are you okay? Dad posted a picture of himself at some nightclub, and he's wearing, is that a gold chain? Honey, your father is going through what psychologists call temporary insanity, and what I call Tuesday. Just focus on your studies and let the adults handle the adult stupidity." But Emma, bless her heart, had inherited my investigative skills and Tyler's stubborn streak. "Mom, I did some research on this Savannah person." "Emma, no. Don't go down that rabbit hole. It only leads to more questions and therapy bills." "Too late. Mom, she's been engaged 3 times. 3. And her Instagram is basically a masterclass in gold-digging 101. She has posts about finding your sugar daddy and lifestyle upgrades." I should have been shocked. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt that familiar mix of secondhand embarrassment and dark amusement that comes from watching someone you once loved make choices that would embarrass a reality TV producer. Tyler, meanwhile, was doubling down on his new identity. He started shopping at stores clearly designed for men half his age, which led to him showing up at our son Jake's college baseball game wearing ripped jeans and a tank top that showcased exactly why men our age shouldn't wear tank tops in public. Jake texted me afterward, "Mom, Dad asked me to call him T-Dog in front of his girlfriend. I think we need an intervention. Or witness protection." The really spectacular moments came during our official separation meetings with lawyers. Tyler would show up looking like he was auditioning for a boy band reunion tour, while Savannah sat beside him wearing outfits that cost more than most people's rent, scrolling through her phone like she was too important for legal proceedings that would determine her future comfort level. His lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia who had clearly seen this exact scenario play out more times than anyone should have to witness, maintained professional composure while Tyler explained his emotional needs and how Savannah understood him on a deeper level. Mr. Parker, Patricia said with the patience of someone who specialized in cleaning up midlife crisis messes, can you explain to the court why you believe you're entitled to primary ownership of the family home when your wife contributed equally to the mortgage payments? Tyler actually straightened up like he was about to deliver the Gettysburg Address. Your Honor, Savannah has vision for the property. She's an interior design influencer with over 10,000 followers. She understands spatial dynamics and aesthetic value in ways that Madison never could. I had to bite my tongue to keep from mentioning that Savannah's idea of interior design was hanging fairy lights around everything and calling it rustic chic, or that her 10,000 followers were probably bots and men hoping she'd notice their thirsty comments. But the absolute crown jewel of this whole circus happened at Jake's 21st birthday dinner. Tyler insisted on bringing Savannah to this family milestone, apparently unaware that introducing your son to his stepmother-to-be, who's closer to his age than yours, requires a different kind of social navigation than he'd mastered. We met at Tony Roma's, Jake's choice because he has simple tastes, and I wasn't about to argue about restaurant selection when I was already dealing with Tyler's fashion choices. Tyler showed up wearing designer jeans and a shirt that was trying very hard to be casual, but cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Savannah arrived looking like she was attending a completely different event, something involving red carpets and photographers, in a dress that was more suitable for a nightclub than a family birthday dinner. She spent the first 10 minutes of dinner taking photos of her food for Instagram, while Tyler watched her like she was performing surgery instead of arranging lettuce for better lighting. So, Savannah, Jake said with the diplomatic skills he definitely didn't inherit from his father, Dad says you're in interior design? Oh, yes, she said, finally looking up from her phone. I'm totally passionate about creating spaces that reflect people's authentic selves. Like, your dad's house has such amazing potential once we get rid of all the old energy. Old energy. Like 15 years of family memories were some kind of spiritual pollution that needed sage burning and crystal cleansing. Emma kicked me under the table when I started to respond, reminding me that sometimes the best strategy is letting people reveal themselves without assistance. That sounds interesting, Jake continued. What kind of training do you have in interior design? Savannah's smile flickered like a candle in wind. Well, I haven't gone to school for it yet, but I have such a natural eye for these things. Plus, I watch a lot of HGTV and Pinterest is basically my Bible. Tyler jumped in like he was defending her doctoral thesis. Formal training isn't everything, Jake. Some people just have natural artistic ability. Natural artistic ability. Like hanging inspirational quotes in cursive fonts was the Sistine Chapel of home decor. The dinner continued with Savannah explaining her vision for their life together, which apparently involved a lot of travel, expensive restaurants, and Tyler funding her dream of becoming a lifestyle blogger who could influence other women to live their best lives. After dinner, Tyler pulled me aside in the parking lot with that serious face again. Madison, I need you to understand something. What Savannah and I have isn't just physical attraction. We connect on an intellectual level. Intellectual level. This from a man whose girlfriend thought vintage meant anything older than her last iPhone. Tyler, I said as gently as possible, I hope you're happy. I really do. Just maybe keep your expectations realistic. You never believed in me, Madison? That's why this didn't work. Savannah sees my potential. My potential. Like he was a startup company instead of a 50-year-old insurance adjuster with a 401k and a mortgage. But as I watched them drive away in Tyler's new convertible, because of course he bought a convertible, with Savannah taking selfies while he tried to look like someone who belonged in a car designed for people whose backs could handle sitting low to the ground, I felt something unexpected. Not sadness. Not anger. Something that felt suspiciously like anticipation. Because I'd started getting phone calls. Interesting phone calls from people who knew Savannah before she became Tyler's vision of perfect womanhood. And let's just say her track record with older men with assets was becoming a very fascinating pattern. The divorce papers were scheduled to be signed in 2 weeks. Tyler was confident he'd gotten everything he wanted: the house, a reduced alimony payment, and his Instagram princess who made him feel like a king instead of a middle-aged man having the world's most expensive identity crisis. But as they say in Texas, it ain't over till it's over. And I was just getting started. The phone call that changed everything came from Emma, and her voice had that particular excitement that meant she'd found something that would either solve world hunger or destroy someone's reputation. In this case, it was definitely option 2. Mom, you need to sit down. Actually, maybe pour some wine first. Emma, it's 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Trust me on this one. I've been doing more research on Savannah, and I found her ex-roommate from when she lived in Austin. Mom, this woman has stories. Her name was Chelsea, and she agreed to meet me at a coffee shop in Deep Ellum that afternoon. Chelsea was everything Savannah wasn't. Genuine, straightforward, and had the look of someone who'd survived a natural disaster and lived to warn others about the weather patterns. Honey, Chelsea said, stirring her latte with the intensity of someone preparing for battle. You are not Savannah's first rodeo. You're not even her second or third. This girl has a system, and your husband is following the playbook like he wrote it himself. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through screenshots she'd apparently been collecting like evidence for a federal case. Savannah came to Austin 3 years ago, fresh from helping a divorced businessman named Robert get back on his feet. 62 years old, owned 3 car dealerships, thought he was getting a second chance at love with a young woman who appreciated his wisdom and experience. Let me guess? She appreciated his bank account more? Girl, she appreciated his bank account, his credit cards, his house in Westlake Hills, and his boat. Robert thought he was living the dream until he came home early from a business trip and found Savannah with her actual boyfriend, a personal trainer named Marcus who's 23 and looks like he was carved from marble by angels. Chelsea showed me photos. Marcus was indeed carved by angels, assuming angels were into creating humans who looked like they belonged on romance novel covers. He was everything Tyler wasn't. Young, fit, and had the kind of abs that suggested his relationship with the gym was more committed than most marriages. But here's the really beautiful part, Chelsea continued, her voice taking on the quality of someone sharing the world's most satisfying gossip. Savannah had been planning to clean out Robert's accounts and disappear with Marcus, but Robert's accountant was smarter than Robert was. When the money started moving, Robert got suspicious and hired a private investigator. Please tell me this story has a happy ending. Oh, it gets better. The PI didn't just find Marcus, he found the other guys. Savannah was running a side business with what she called her investment portfolio. 3 different older men who thought they were her one true love, all getting bled dry while she planned her future with Captain Abs. Chelsea pulled out a manila folder like she was presenting evidence in a criminal trial. Madison, I made copies of everything. Bank statements, text messages, photos, even a journal where she wrote down her strategy for each guy. She called it her retirement planning. My hands were actually shaking as I opened the folder. Inside were printouts of text exchanges between Savannah and Marcus that read like a masterclass in financial manipulation. They had pet names for each of her targets. Tyler was the insurance guy, Robert was Car Lot King, and there was apparently a third victim named Harold they called the pharmacist, who owned a chain of drugstores in Houston. But the real treasure was a handwritten note in Savannah's looping, Instagram-ready handwriting. It was a letter she'd apparently written to Marcus but never sent, detailing her progress with Tyler and their timeline for the big score. Marcus, baby, the insurance guy is even easier than we thought. He actually thinks I'm attracted to his dad jokes and his stories about adjusting claims. LOL, but his house is worth $800K and he's got retirement accounts that would set us up for life. Give me 6 more months to get that divorce finalized, and we can disappear to Costa Rica like we planned. P.S. He bought me a $5,000 necklace yesterday because I told him it reminded me of his eyes. Men are so stupid when they're desperate. Can't wait to get this over with so we can be together for real. The things I'd do for money. At least he's not as gross as the Car Lot King was. I read that letter 3 times, each time feeling a different emotion. First shock, then vindication, then something that felt suspiciously like Christmas morning. Chelsea, please tell me you have more of these. Honey, I have a whole folder. And get this, Marcus doesn't know that Savannah is already texting with a fourth guy. Apparently, she's got a backup plan for her backup plan. Chelsea showed me Savannah's dating app profiles. 3 different ones, all with slightly different ages and backgrounds, all targeting men over 45 with financial stability listed as a requirement. Her bio on one site literally said, "Looking for a mature man who knows how to treat a lady and isn't afraid to show it." The photos were professional-level glamour shots that must have cost more than my monthly rent, and each profile was optimized for maximum gold digger appeal without technically saying, "I'm looking for someone to financially support my lifestyle while I cheat on them with a personal trainer." But wait, I said, my brain starting to process possibilities. If she's been doing this for 3 years, and you have all this evidence, why didn't Robert use it in his divorce? Chelsea's smile could have lit up downtown Dallas. Because Robert's lawyer was an idiot who settled out of court. Robert was so embarrassed about being played by someone younger than his daughter that he just wanted it to go away quietly. He gave Savannah a settlement to avoid public humiliation. How much? $200,000. I nearly choked on my coffee. Tyler was about to hand over half of everything we'd built together to a woman who had made a career out of this exact scenario. Chelsea, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Would you be willing to testify about what you know? In court? Honey, I would pay for the privilege. Savannah cost my friend Robert his dignity and a big chunk of his retirement. She's a predator, and predators need to be stopped. We spent the next 2 hours going through every piece of evidence Chelsea had collected. Text messages between Savannah and Marcus planning their Costa Rica escape. Bank statements showing unusual transfers from Robert's accounts. Photos of Savannah with Marcus taken during the same time period she was supposedly devoted to Robert. And most damaging of all, a recorded phone call where Savannah described Tyler as pathetic but useful, and laughed about how he actually believed she was attracted to him. The recording was brutal. Savannah's voice, without the sweet, helpless tone she used with Tyler, was sharp and calculating. She talked about Tyler like he was a business transaction, discussing his assets, his gullibility, and her timeline for maximizing profit before moving on to the next target. "The best part," she said in the recording, "is that he's so desperate to feel young again, he'll believe anything. I told him his ex-wife was probably jealous of our connection, and he ate it up. These middle-aged men are all the same. They want to feel special so badly they'll ignore every red flag if you just validate their egos enough." As I listened to Savannah describe Tyler's vulnerabilities like she was analyzing a stock portfolio, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about our divorce anymore. This was about protecting Tyler from making the biggest financial and emotional mistake of his life, even if he was too blinded by his midlife crisis to see it coming. But more than that, it was about justice. Chelsea was right. Savannah was a predator, and she'd found the perfect hunting ground among divorced men who were vulnerable, lonely, and desperate to feel desirable again. The divorce papers were scheduled to be signed in 1 week. Tyler thought he was getting his happy ending, and Savannah thought she was getting her biggest payday yet. Neither of them knew that I'd just become the most dangerous thing in their carefully planned future. A woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Game on. The morning of our divorce hearing, Tyler showed up to the courthouse looking like he'd stepped out of a men's magazine advertisement for how to look successful while making terrible life choices. Designer suit, new haircut, and that confidence that comes from thinking you've outsmarted everyone around you. Savannah arrived dressed like she was attending a movie premiere instead of a legal proceeding that would determine her access to Tyler's assets. She wore a white dress, white to a divorce hearing, and carried a purse that probably cost more than most people's monthly car payment. They sat together at their table, Tyler occasionally reaching over to squeeze her hand like they were attending a romantic dinner, instead of the legal dissolution of his 15-year marriage. Savannah kept checking her phone, which should have been Tyler's first clue that maybe her attention wasn't entirely focused on their future together, but Tyler was too busy feeling victorious to notice. My lawyer, Patricia, sat beside me with the calm confidence of someone who'd been doing this long enough to know that surprises were often the best part of family court. She'd reviewed all the evidence Chelsea and I had gathered, and her only comment was, "Madison, This is either going to be the most satisfying case of my career, or we're about to witness a grown man have a complete emotional breakdown in public. Possibly both. Judge Henderson called the court to order, and Tyler's lawyer began presenting their case with the enthusiasm of someone who thought they were about to win the legal lottery. They outlined Tyler's request for primary ownership of the house, reduced alimony payments, and an asset split that would have left me with approximately half of what I'd contributed to our marriage. Your Honor, Tyler's lawyer said, my client has found happiness with Miss Morrison, and they're planning to build a life together that reflects their shared values and mutual respect. Mutual respect. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing out loud. When it was my turn, Patricia stood up with the bearing of someone who was about to ruin several people's day, and she was going to enjoy every minute of it. Your Honor, before we proceed with the asset division, I'd like to present some evidence that may be relevant to this case. Evidence concerning Miss Morrison's intentions regarding my client's soon-to-be ex-husband. Tyler's face went through several color changes as Patricia began laying out Chelsea's testimony. She started with the bank statements from Robert's divorce, showing the pattern of financial manipulation that had cost him $200,000. Your Honor, Miss Morrison has engaged in this exact scenario with multiple men over the past 3 years. She targets divorced men in their 50s, establishes romantic relationships, and then systematically drains their financial resources while maintaining a relationship with her actual boyfriend. Savannah's face had gone from Instagram-ready to deer in headlights in approximately 30 seconds. Tyler was looking back and forth between Savannah and Patricia like he was watching a tennis match played with hand grenades. Then Patricia played the recording. Savannah's voice filled the courtroom with crystal clarity as she described Tyler as pathetic but useful and outlined her timeline for extracting his assets before disappearing to Costa Rica with Marcus. The worst part, or best part, depending on your perspective, was hearing her laugh about Tyler's belief that she was actually attracted to him. The best part is that he actually thinks he's good in bed, Savannah's recorded voice continued. I have to fake everything, but at least it won't be for much longer. Once I get half his stuff in the divorce, Marcus and I can finally start our real life. The courtroom was so quiet you could have heard Tyler's ego shattering into a million pieces. He was staring at Savannah like he was seeing her for the first time, which, in a way, he was. Your Honor, Patricia continued, we also have evidence of Miss Morrison's relationship with Marcus Williams, a personal trainer with whom she's been planning her future while simultaneously planning a future with my client's ex-husband. Patricia produced the photos Chelsea had provided. Savannah and Marcus in passionate embraces, vacation photos from trips that happened during the same time periods when she was supposedly devoted to Tyler, and text messages discussing their plans to use Tyler's divorce settlement to fund their escape to Central America. But the piece de resistance was the letter. Patricia read it aloud in its entirety, including Savannah's commentary about Tyler's dad jokes and her countdown to getting this over with. Tyler's face went through more emotions than a soap opera actor in a season finale. Shock, denial, hurt, rage, and finally, humiliation so complete that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Your Honor, Tyler said, his voice barely above a whisper, I had no idea. Savannah, is this true? Savannah's response was to grab her purse and bolt for the courtroom exit like she was being chased by federal agents. She made it about 10 feet before the bailiff stopped her, which added a nice touch of drama to an already spectacular scene. Miss Morrison, Judge Henderson said with the dry humor that comes from decades of watching human stupidity play out in legal settings, I suggest you return to your seat. We're not quite finished here. Savannah walked back to her seat like she was walking to her execution, which, in terms of her financial plans, she basically was. Tyler was still staring at her like she'd grown a second head, and his lawyer was shuffling papers with the desperate energy of someone trying to salvage a case that had just exploded in his face. Mr. Parker, Judge Henderson said, in light of this new evidence, would you like to reconsider your asset division requests? Tyler looked at Savannah one more time, and whatever he saw there, or didn't see, apparently convinced him that his fairy tale romance had been more like a horror story with better lighting. Your Honor, I think I need to reconsider everything. Patricia leaned over and whispered to me, "This is where we make our counteroffer." What happened next was 15 minutes of the most satisfying legal maneuvering I've ever witnessed. Since Tyler had initiated the divorce and had been planning to leave me financially disadvantaged to fund his relationship with a woman who was demonstrably defrauding him, Patricia argued that he should be responsible for the majority of legal fees and that the asset split should favor me as the victimized party. Tyler, still in shock and apparently realizing that fighting would only extend his public humiliation, agreed to almost everything. I got the house, the majority of our joint assets, and enough alimony to ensure I could rebuild my life without worrying about rent above a pub that smelled like broken dreams. But the real victory wasn't financial. The real victory was watching Tyler finally understand that actions have consequences, that middle-aged vulnerability doesn't excuse complete stupidity, and that sometimes the person you're trying to hurt is the only one who actually cares enough to save you from yourself. As we left the courthouse, Tyler caught up with me in the parking lot. Savannah was nowhere to be seen, having apparently decided that staying to fight for a relationship based entirely on fraud wasn't worth the effort. "Madison," Tyler said, and for the first time in months he sounded like the man I'd married instead of the stranger he'd become. "I'm so sorry. I was such an idiot." "Tyler, you were having a midlife crisis. It happens. But next time you decide to blow up your life, maybe do some basic research on the person you're blowing it up for." He actually laughed, which was progress. "There won't be a next time. I think I need to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone else." As I drove home, to my house, which was now legally and completely my house, I couldn't help but smile. Tyler would be fine. He'd learned an expensive but necessary lesson about the difference between feeling young and acting foolish, and maybe he'd emerge from this whole experience as a better person. As for Savannah, well, she'd have to find a new hunting ground. Word travels fast in divorced middle-aged man circles, and I had a feeling her reputation was about to precede her in very inconvenient ways. Sometimes justice isn't about punishment. Sometimes it's about truth, served at exactly the right temperature. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my fully redecorated living room. And by redecorated, I mean I removed every trace of Tyler's midlife crisis phase and returned it to a place where adults could live without feeling like they were staying at a hotel designed by someone who thought mature was a dirty word. The house feels bigger now, which is ironic since it's the same square footage it always was. But without Tyler's defensive energy and Savannah's calculating presence, the space has expanded to fit my actual life instead of the performance I'd been putting on for years without realizing it. Emma comes home from college regularly now, and she's stopped walking on eggshells around the topic of the divorce. Last weekend, she found the manila folder of Savannah's evidence and asked if she could use it for a psychology paper on manipulative behavior patterns. I told her to change the names and knock herself out. Academic success built on family dysfunction. Now that's making lemonade from lemons. Jake calls more often too, mostly to check in, but sometimes to share updates about Tyler's post-divorce life. Apparently, Tyler has embraced his actual age with the enthusiasm of someone who's discovered that being 52 isn't a terminal diagnosis. He's dating a woman named Carol, who's 48, owns her own accounting firm, and according to Jake, actually laughs at Dad's jokes because she finds them funny, not because she's planning to steal his retirement fund. The really satisfying part is that Tyler seems genuinely happy now, in a way that's sustainable and real instead of desperate and performative. He's stopped dressing like he's auditioning for a boy band and started dressing like a successful man who's comfortable with his place in the world. The motorcycle is gone, replaced by a sensible SUV that can handle Texas weather and doesn't require him to pretend his back doesn't hurt. As for Savannah, the internet has provided updates whether I wanted them or not. Apparently, she tried to continue her business model with a dentist from Plano, but word of her courthouse performance had spread faster than she anticipated. Texas divorced men over 45 had apparently created an informal network that would make the FBI proud, and Savannah found herself persona non grata in her preferred hunting grounds. Last I heard, she'd moved back to California to pursue modeling opportunities, which I interpreted as find new victims in markets that haven't heard about the courthouse incident. Marcus, interestingly, had moved on to a wealthy widow in Scottsdale, which suggested that even professional gold diggers have to deal with workplace competition. The most unexpected part of this whole experience has been discovering who I am when I'm not trying to save a marriage that one person had already abandoned. Turns out, I'm funnier than I gave myself credit for, more resourceful than I needed to be, and significantly less patient with nonsense than I was when I thought keeping the peace was my primary job. I've started taking photography classes at the community college, which has led to the discovery that I have an actual talent for capturing genuine moments, something I'd clearly lost practice with during my marriage to Tyler's performance of happiness. The classes have also introduced me to David, a widowed art instructor who finds my divorce story hilarious rather than tragic, and who has the revolutionary concept of actually being the age he claims to be. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's discovering that the life you thought someone ruined was actually just getting started. And honestly, watching Tyler's midlife crisis implode spectacularly while I emerged financially secure and emotionally free, that's what I call a happy ending with perfect timing.